If I say the three words Alexander Graham Bell, you probably think telephone. Well, let me tell you, he invented many more things than the telephone, and many of them in Nova Scotia. He conducted very many critical experiments, and today people are celebrating one of his most important efforts, 100 years of his famous Cygnet Kite. The CBC's Joan Weekes is in Baddeck. Joan, what a contrast as I look at you and what we've seen, the terrible images of the Hurricane Beinn in Mexico. What a gorgeous setting for what we're going to talk about today.
I can't complain. The sun is just shining down on us in Baddeck this morning. And as you mentioned, many people know Graham Bell for the telephone, but people aren't quite as aware that he was a pioneer of aviation as well, almost competing with the Wright brothers. And he did hundreds and hundreds of experiments with kites leading up to that first flight of the Silver Dart. In fact, Bell really invented the tetrahedral kite, which is a kite made up of triangles in a four-sided cube. And that allowed him to build very large kites that were very light. And the Cygnet Kite that we're marking today is really the culmination of all those kite flying efforts. And so 40 people have been specifically chosen to come here today to the Bell Estate and commemorate that occasion.
And just before we talk about what they're going to do, Joan, not only when you talk about a large kite, I mean large enough for a person to ride in it. Can you just give us a little bit more detail about this? This was sort of the precursor to aviation, to flight.
It really was, and the kite itself was made up of these cells of the triangles in the cubes, and it was almost 4,000 cells. But because he invented this form, he could make it very large and very light, so it didn't weigh down. So it was an amazing invention at that time. And
all the people are converging there to celebrate his accomplishments. What are they expected to do there today?
Well, later this morning, the 40 people who have been chosen, they're kite experts, and the first 40 to register were invited here. Many people don't realize that Bell's great-nieces and great-nephews still come here to Baddeck every summer, and many of them have homes on the Bell Estate near surrounding Beinn Bhreagh. And one of them, Hugh Muller, is actually a kite enthusiast himself. So he's invited these 40 people to come to a private event where they've designed their own tetrahedral kites, and they're going to be flying them here on the estate later this morning. And I understand that one of them is even shaped like a telephone, an old-fashioned telephone like Bell may have used years ago. So it should be quite the sight later this morning with 40 kites flying in the air above Beinn Bhreagh.
It will be. We'll look forward to the pictures coming back from that. It's a Toronto kite designer who's made that telephone shape. Joan, thank you so much. Joan Weekes, we'll see you later on in the morning. Joan's in Baddeck, Nova Scotia today, where it is a gorgeous day. We're going to learn about today's events from none other than, as Joan was mentioning, Alexander Graham Bell's grandson. Hugh Bell Muller will tell us more about the Cygnet Kite and its importance to aviation history and his view, his recollections of his great-grandfather as well. That's at 8:40 Eastern Time. There are some very excited kite flyers in Baddeck, Nova Scotia this morning. They're to remember a milestone by Alexander Graham Bell. He spent years there experimenting with aviation, and 100 years ago, this year, he made one of his most important flights with the Cygnet Kite. Well, his great-grandson is Hugh Bell Muller, and he is there to talk more about this occasion. Mr. Muller, good morning.
Well, good morning to you, and welcome to Cape Breton.
Oh, thank you so much. Look at the kites behind you. They're just gorgeous in tribute to your great-grandfather. Let's start with a bit of a history lesson, Mr. Muller. Remind us of your great-grandfather's interest in aviation, because, of course, we think of the telephone. So remind us of aviation.
He's always been interested in the concept of man flying, even as a child. And I think the thing that really started him anew on the flight business was seeing the Langley's flight, which was sometime in the latter part of the 1800s. And that sort of stimulated him to do more exploration. And he used kites to study because he was very much concerned with the issue of stability.
And so the first step in that process was the Cygnet that we're talking about. Tell me a little bit more about this famous kite.
Okay, now this Cygnet was actually at the end of a long line of experiments, and it was a good-sized kite. It was about 42 feet across and contained 3,400 of these tetrahedral cells, but they're not very big, as you can see.
Okay.
But they covered them with silk and put them all together, and away they went.
And away they went with someone in it too, didn't they?
That's right. Tom Selfridge, who was with the AEA group, was given the privilege of flying, and he flew over Baddeck Bay, which is just behind me here, towed behind the steamer. They had a great time until the wind let up, and they put some more coal on the steamer, and the smoke obscured the kite, and the kite dropped down in the water and gave Selfridge a little bit of a bath.
Into the drink he went.
That was November.
He was okay.
December 6th, too. December
oh my goodness,
6th.
that would have been cold. So this was it was a success for a period of time until he took that bath. But what was the impact of that on subsequent aviation milestones?
Well, quite frankly, it had more to do with trying to find a stable way of getting people into the air. He had seen the bi-wing planes of Wright, of course, and felt that they're not yet stable, and that the kites would be a stabler way of doing it. Unfortunately, he was never able to get a light enough or powerful enough engine to propel them, and so although that was the first of the projects of the AEA, the young fellows that were with him, which were 2 Canadians and 2 Americans, Casey Baldwin and Douglas McCurdy on the Canadian side, and Glenn Curtis and Tom Selfridge on the American side. They finally talked him into to going with the bi-wing plane, and there was a series of planes that they built.
That led right up to the Silver Dart. The famous Silver Dart,
right up to the Silver Dart. That's
now,
right,
I know that
exactly.
you didn't have a chance to meet your great-grandfather personally, but as I look at the beautiful tribute to him behind you, people flying kites in his honor and gathered there, what is it like to see his legacy acknowledged and remembered as it is being today?
Oh, it's always nice to see that, and I think he would have been pleased also. He was always, as I say, from a boy, he was interested in kite flying, as most of us were, of course, and he carried that sense of wonder, you might say, right through to the very end. And after the kites, he went on to other things. He did the HD4s, the craft that set the speed limit or speed record for crafts on the water for about 10, 12 years. So when he finished with this, he went on to the next thing. He was not necessarily interested in following up on these things.
He certainly was. What an active mind. And listen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, sir, and to pay tribute to your great-grandfather in this conversation. Thank you.
Well, you come down to Cape Breton and see us.
Oh, you bet. I've been there. Beautiful mountain, as it's called, and it is beautiful. Thank you. That's Hugh Bell Muller from Cape Breton and Baddeck, Cape Breton this morning. CBC News Morning is back after this.